Folks, I am so excited to welcome to my new show, The Fire Pit with Danielle Moodie, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Christina Greer, who is a politics professor at Fordham University. She's also an accomplished author of multiple books. She is a podcaster in her own right. She is a columnist at Amsterdam News. She does the most. And she has decided to join me today to talk about the fuck shit that is American politics right now. Dr. Christina Greer, please tell me of your introduction, what I missed and all of the things that you do on a daily.
Well, one, President, CEO of the Danielle Moodie Fan Club. Two, my most recent book, which is this one, How to Build a Democracy, from Phelan Hamer and Barbara Jordan to Stacey Abrams, where I talk about Black women as key to the foundation of the building of American democracy, inside and outside of politics. And I think that's about it for now. Oh, and a lover of nature and birds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. She is a birder, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So I want to jump in today with where we are right now with this regime currently musing on the idea of invoking the Insurrection Act. We heard reports last week that this is a serious conversation that is now happening inside of the White House. We have had multiple judges in both Oregon and Chicago either put on hold the ability of this regime to deploy the National Guard into Oregon, into Chicago. And so because of that, because they are seeing some speed bumps, right, on their desire for a full authoritarian takeover, they're now thinking about the Insurrection Act. Over the weekend, J.D. Vance was doing the Sunday shows, and he spoke openly about this. As a professor of politics, I want to get your thought on this 1700s policy that is super vague, which is why I believe that this regime is wanting to use it. But get your thoughts on the timing, the probability of it actually happening.
Well, with this administration / regime, we know anything is possible, right? And we've seen them just ignore the will of law. We've seen them ignore judges. And the vagueness that is American democracy, this is why we have so many amendments to the Constitution, is because the framers were like, well, we don't know who's coming. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, they had their own bag. So you have people like Steve Bannon and Steve Miller who have been thinking about these types of things for quite some time. And we know their thought process and how they view America and the white nationalist agenda that they both have. Here's the other side of it, where we still have courts that are working. We still have several attorneys general who have met before Donald Trump was sworn in for the second time, and they're preparing their own strategies to protect their citizens. I think it gets a little wonky when you start talking about quote unquote red states. I think all states are red states, but some just have more blue cities. But clearly we have enough people who support this regime where we've seen it come back again. So I think everything's a possibility. I do think it's interesting how they're sort of throwing J.D. Vance out there to sort of get people used to the idea of him. They're using him in a way that we haven't seen vice presidents use before. And that can either be because Donald Trump is incoherent and rambling and sometimes goes way off message, or they know things that we don't know. And it's like, we need to sort of get him a little bit more practice because he might actually have to be the president at some point in time. Because, this administration keeps lying to us about the president's health and his visits to Walter Reed and the medications he's on. They're just blatantly lying. So I think the thing is, J.D. Vance isn't good at lying. So when George Stephanopoulos, who's not known as a heavy-hitting reporter and a gotcha reporter and someone who drills down super deep, but when he's just asking basic questions, it's like, so did he take the money or not? What was the money for?
Right.
And we've seen time and time again with this administration, the Pam Bondis of the world, the Gnomes, it's the gaslighting 101, right? Let me perform. Danielle, I'm so offended that you would ask me that. Girl, I'm asking you the question. Yep. Answer it. It's a yes or a no, right? We're not talking about the tone. And I think that's been so interesting to see how they're trying to circumvent reality, and people aren't falling for it the way I think they have in the recent past, where everyone's like, thank you for the performance. Question still remains, right? I'm asking it calmly. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm literally asking a question because the American public is curious. And the American public is still very curious about this 25-year long relationship, friendship that the president had with David Epstein. So I sort of view everything that we're going through right now as a distraction from the original question, which is, what was the president's relationship with David Epstein and all these young girls on this island and all these wealthy men? That was the original question. We have not got an answer for that. And everything that has followed suit, attacking cities, attacking mayors, attacking Black women, whether they're, Lisa Cook for mortgage fraud or Tish James for mortgage fraud, right? To say nothing of all the Republicans who we know have their own financial issues because they have multiple houses and they vote in the wrong places and et cetera. Everything that I'm seeing coming out of this administration is to make sure that we have to talk about everything, but the original question on the table, which is, there we go. I said Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein. And I think that that's right. And I say that to people as well, but it doesn't steer us away from the fact that Donald Trump is escalating the violence, right? Like we know we can talk about the why, right, of that, which is distraction, but it doesn't take us from the reality that we are seeing scrolling on our screens, ICE agents being given carte blanche to throw women to the ground, to throw people to the ground, to shoot a pastor in the head with pepper balls, to really harm people. I mean, you had Stephen Miller, right, on television saying that the military and our law enforcement was quote unquote unleashed. Right, we've taken off the handcuffs and you can do what you want. And so when we take these things into consideration and we're looking at the resurrection of this Frankenstein law, the Insurrection Act, that is about, quelling rebellion and giving the president limited power because of an actual insurrection. But we know that they're using that language just so that they can kind of lay the breadcrumbs around it. What does it look like to have, I guess, real pushback from Democratic establishment and to really signal to the people of this country that this is not just grandstanding, that this is almost in ways inevitable?
It's reality. Right. Well, I think the pushback has to come in a multi-prong approach, right? I think so many people in America are just used to Black people taking to the streets, and we have perfected protest in American politics, period. That is, from protest to politics, we have tons of American politics books written about that, insider and outsider tactics of doing so. But what it's going to take is a lot of people getting off of the sidelines, even if they're not affected. And we have, we saw it some of the civil rights movement, and lots of people are still patting themselves on the back for, a march. But this is not a sprint. It's going to be a marathon. And so we have to make sure that even if you don't have someone who who might be deported, like, you have to get skin in the game, whether it's writing your elected officials constantly. I mean, I talk to elected officials all the time, and they're, Chrissy, the thing that moves us is when people write our office. They're like, how we vote, how we think, it's very clear. If you are the squeaky wheel, you get the grease. And that has to happen not just on Democratic side, but on the Republican side too. There has to be a level of humanity, compassion, and some sort of American solidarity where people are like, this absolutely is who our country is. So let's not use that language. But I keep calling it like the cicadas of hatred have been excavated. Like, they've always been there, but they were a little dormant for a few years. And we sort of told ourselves that they weren't as active as they could be. And they've been activated. But I genuinely don't believe that there are more people who support this regime than those who don't. I don't think those numbers are there. I think that we've got a lot of passive people, and it's going to take those people to recognize, like, listen, he's coming for everybody. And if you don't snap out of it, he will come for you. And so, like, you got to meet people where they are and speak in a language that they understand. And so if coalition building isn't a language they understand, if helping undocumented isn't a language they understand, if helping immigrants isn't a language they understand, if helping marginalized communities and people of color or Black people isn't a language they understand, let me speak in a language that you understand. They are coming for you too, because once they do all the things to our communities, the bloodthirst is there, right? The
Right.
power grab
Right.
is there. So it's like, if you have a job, now he's firing Black women left and right, but why not? I mean, once you do the smash and grab, let's fire some more people. It will come to you. Like, you can't sort of you can't watch people sort of get drowned in mud and then think that you're going to walk away with white sneakers. It's not possible. So I think sometimes we want people to be exactly where we are at the same
Mm-hmm.
sort of level of heat or whatever. And it's like, no, no, no. I just need you to do the thing that I need you to do, even if it's for this period of time, so we can get ourselves back on track. Because it is possible to get back on track. We're not in the land of no return just yet, but we could get there, especially when we have people who aren't even ICE agents just pretending to be ICE agents, because
Right.
ICE agents don't have any identification. So it's like, if we weren't Black women of a certain size and Black and female, we could put on masks and cosplay like we're from G.I. Joe too. And that's the thing. You have all these men who are just so angry. They're just angry. They're angry that there's been competition. They're angry that they feel like the world is passing them by. They're angry that they're not making as much money as their girlfriends, or they wish they could have a girlfriend. Like, they are like Archie Bunker on steroids, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
all these things that they think that they were promised because they had white skin and male genitalia aren't happening. And it's like, it has to be taken out on someone. It's like, sweetie, this is all the rollbacks on DEI, right? Because you say that it's, oh, we're decreasing quality. It's like, no, no, no. You guys had everything because there was no competition. Now that there's
Right.
competition, you don't get everything. And that has to change according to this administration. And we're seeing it. But I think it's going to take a lot of people, a lot of different types of people to snap out of it. But the problem is, and this is where it gets really tenuous, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be white to support white supremacy. So we see time and time again that, like, people are like, well, if this white supremacy thing, it seems like it's kind of awesome. Like, you get what you want. You don't have to work as hard. You don't have to be that qualified. So I'm into it. And we've seen it, with Black folks running for office. We've seen it
Mm-hmm.
with, Latinos who want to sort of be in the winning group, especially in places like Texas and Arizona. We're seeing it with, Asian Americans all across the country, especially in parts of New York and California. So it's interesting when people are like, how did all these immigrants vote for Donald Trump? He said what he was going to do. And it's like, right. But they didn't think that it would, it's like, well, if I'm just cool enough and good enough and buddy up enough to this regime, then, they'll
Right.
think I'm one of the good ones. It's
It's
like, you'll never be one of the good ones.
No, because it's the proximity, right? But you learn. I think that, as a child of immigrants, you learn when you come into this country who's on the bottom and who's on the top, right?
I
And
wrote a
so
book about it.
you do your best, right? You do your best
That one.
to ensure that you get as close as you possibly can to whoever is at the top. And if that means selling out people that look like you, right?
Mhm.
Then so be it. I want to
I
ask you
created a
this.
theory called elevated minority, where it's like Caribbeans. It's like, hey, listen, you're never going to be a
Right.
model minority like Asian Americans. But there are a lot of Caribbeans who are like, well, could I at least not be Black American? It's like, yeah, there's a possibility that could happen. So that's literally what I talk about in Black Ethnics. And it creates tensions because of the residential segregation. Oftentimes, Blacks, Africans, and Caribbeans are buttressed in residential
Mm-hmm.
spaces together. Because, hey, guess what? You're Black. So when the cops decide to shoot you, they're not like, Danielle, are you Caribbean or second
Right.
gen? Like, nobody cares.
Exactly.
You're Black. So I think that's where also there's this reminder of this like permanent prefix that a lot of immigrants are like, but I just want to be American, like this other guy
Mm-hmm.
who came the same day as I did. And it's like, right, but they don't get to do that because the original sin is this binary relationship between Blacks and whites in America.
And when you were speaking too, right, about people having skin in the game and getting skin in the game. And I talk a lot about the consistency that is needed, right? That we need to stop doing these summertime internships, which is what I called the protests in 2020 and following the murder of George Floyd. It was like that was a wonderful social justice internship that you all took up. And then as soon as the fall came around, it was just like, I don't really like this class anymore.
Mhm.
So let
Right.
me go and do something else.
But when I
And
get older, I'll tell all my friends, oh my God, guess
that I
where
was
I was?
there.
Yeah.
And so we have coming up, right, this coming weekend, No Kings, right? No
Mhm.
Kings is coming up on October 18th. And many are saying, at least on my social media feed and a lot of other outlets, that this is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, rally march across this country that we've ever seen. And I want to get your thoughts on what the importance of those moments, but then what you believe should actually follow up these big grand
Right.
days,
Right.
right? Because fascism
Well,
isn't just a one-day moment,
right.
right? It is an extended project over decades.
Well, I mean, and also we've seen that the Republicans and right-wing conservatives, I mean, they've been planning for this for like 60 years. Like when they lose, they don't just, say, oh, well, we lost. I mean, they get to work, which we've seen. I mean, they lost in 1973 with Roe v. Wade, and they were like, okay, well, back to work. We'll just have to start with lower courts, but, it'll take a minute. And it did, but they still got what they wanted. I think my frustration with these big parades and marches, it's like, right. So it is good for some people to see, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy, and they're going to be those inspiring stories where it's like there's a small town and 20 people got together and they met each other. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, we are together. This is great. But it always reminds me of what Sonia Sanchez said, which was like after, they would do these civil rights organization meetings and things like that. And she would say, what are our marching orders? Okay, we marched. We met. We're all in alignment. I got it. What are we supposed to do afterwards? So the march is over at 4 p.m. So do we just go to lunch? I mean, what am I supposed to do on October 19th? Did we collect information? Are we writing our electeds? Are we, doing actions outside of ICE facilities? Like, are we protecting people in our communities? Are we housing kids, whose parents are taken away? What are we doing besides this day-long internship? It's kind of like Earth Day,
Mhm.
right? It's like, okay, we planted some trees,
Right.
but you're
Right.
still polluting and you don't recycle. Like, what is the point? I don't know, because yes, will it show the world that like, hey, listen, we tried, right?
We all not tripping. Like we all
Right.
did not
So
vote for Donald Trump.
exactly. But the numbers already said that. I mean, Kamala Harris did not lose by a lot at all. And so, especially with a 107-day campaign, I think the frustrating thing is it sort of reminds me of like the Women's March. Okay, one of the largest marches, the pink hat people. And I'm like, so what y'all do afterwards? You didn't talk to your husbands and your aunts and your uncles and your cousins and tell them not to vote for this man a second time. You
Right.
just told us I'm one of the good ones, but everyone else in my family totally voted for him, but they're like not good. I'm good. It's like, so you didn't do any work. You were sitting there knitting hats and talking to your like-minded friends, but you all didn't do the heavy lifting. So for me, it's like, okay, so I don't plan on marching on the 18th. I
Mhm.
don't. And there's no one who I respect in like that space has said, "Hey, we're organizing this thing." No one has sort of contacted me. I've gotten like miscellaneous emails from different organizations, sure, but like I don't really have a trusted opinion leader who is like, "This is what we're doing," because this is what we're doing after. So for that, it's like, well, listen, I got to meet prospective students at Fordham. Um, I'm the reason why I can sleep at night is like I'm doing what I can, which is my part, which
Right.
is training the future leaders of America. But I think for big marches, I think it is important to show the rest of the world and people in this country like we're not happy. But Donald Trump's going to be sitting in his like gold-plated room eating a well-done hamburger with extra ketchup. Like, okay, I don't care. I mean, the fact that we have moved past the fact that were grown men and women ripping down the windowsills and the bearings
Mhm.
of the Capitol.
Mhm.
And it's like, let's not
Mhm.
talk about that. So it's going to be, these people were so violent and, they hate America. It's like, they're going to say what they're going to say. We're not going to have a unified, coordinated message, sadly. And what changes? And so if I knew what the plan was for October 19th, I think I'd feel more comfortable about all this organization on October 18th. But I haven't heard anything. And my ears are kind of to the ground. I haven't heard a peep about, well, what's the point of the march? It's a march, okay? But when you think about the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom with Martin Luther King, there was more of a plan post march than for the actual day of the march. Don't gather all these people here and then just be like, okay, bye.
And that's what
Disperse
I
into the wind and we haven't done anything.
and that's what I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I think that major actions are needed because we live in a very like visual and visceral society, right? So you need those photographs and those videos trending. You need, no hashtag no kings trending, right? To bring awareness and attention. But to put an exclamation point on all the things that you're saying, what are we doing on October 19th? And if you,
Absolutely.
and I say this to everyone, I want people to get out there, but then I want you to gather with who you linked arms with on that day and say, so what are we doing tomorrow? Right? Or
Mhm.
is tomorrow the day that we're writing letters to representatives? Is tomorrow the day that we're doing a text chain? Is tomorrow the day that we're dropping off food to food pantries because now we're seeing more active military members show up at food pantries in
Yeah.
need because of this government shutdown? What are you doing on
Are
October
you making sure your
19th?
neighbors are registered? Are you making
Right.
sure your family this is another story that I keep hearing. So many people, hardcore Democrats of all different racial groups, are like, "Man, I found out my aunt voted for Donald Trump." And it's like, "Did you now?" So, like, now is the time on October 19th to have these hard conversations with your relatives because there are a lot of assumptions that I think a lot of people made about their relatives. There's some who are like, "Oh, yeah, my family's totally, Republican," and they didn't try. But there are other people where it's like, you just assumed that people in your family, at the dinner table, they sort of say crazy stuff and they're a little conservative, but I know they voted for this person. And then you find out they absolutely did not because they think, their neighborhood's getting a little too immigrant or whatever the talking
Yep.
point sort of trope that the Russian propaganda puts on Meta or, whatever their Facebook
Hmm.
stream will be. So
So
yeah.
I want to switch gears with the time we have left because I do want to talk about a fissure that I'm seeing that myself, Wajahad, and I on Democracy Ish have been talking about, which is this little turnabout that is happening with some members of the Republican Party, most
Mhm.
notably Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Mhm.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has started to sound like a moderate Democrat in recent weeks. And one, it makes me feel like I'm in the ninth circle of hell because I'm
Mhm.
like, when you have to have me agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I know we are in the upside down.
Right. Right.
But Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I said this week on Democracy Ish, I said, she was the one that told us what direction the Republican Party was headed in. When she said that I am not the fringe of the Republican Party, I am the mainstream. And then a year or
Mhm.
so later, the rest of the world caught up to the fact that she wasn't bullshitting, right? That
Mm-mm.
she was a tin hat wearing conspiracy theorist and
Yeah.
gobbling up whatever MAGA gobbledygook. But she told us where the Republican Party was going. And ta-da, here we are today. Now, she is seeing something else. And I personally believe that she is seeing the weaknesses of the GOP and she is seeing a weakened Donald Trump, and she is doing the prep work necessary for
Mhm.
what her future looks like in a post Trump America and a post Trump MAGA. What do you make of her recent appearances going hard on Epstein files and also doubling down on who is responsible for the shutdown, which she blames Republicans and Mike Johnson for and not the Democratic Party?
Well, I'd be really curious to see the polling in her district to see
Hmm.
what they are interested in because, like, I don't think she's acting alone, just I care about these things. So I would be curious to see what her district also looks like because don't forget she didn't win by a massive margin the first time.
No. Hmm.
So that district is probably unique. I think that there are a lot of Republicans, maybe even more so than Democrats, are like, listen, these are scumbags. Like, we know what we're looking at. But I think a lot of Republicans, because they're so obsessed with pedophilia, because they're so obsessed with sort of sexual deviance, they are still curious. And it seems like each day it's like, well, if there's nothing, then just show me nothing. But you keep
Right.
changing your story. And so the story's not making any sense now. Right. And so you keep trying to turn me around. But now it's just getting obvious that you're trying to obfuscate. And then with the shutdown, she's a survivalist. So if the president's a Republican, the majority of the Senate's a Republican, the majority of the House is a Republican, well, then it's the Republicans. If we've had 5 shutdowns in the past, 25 years, 3 of them have been under Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump. He's not the negotiator that we think. So she's looking at her political future and also her district, and people in her district are probably just like, we need this money, right? First,
Yep.
we had the layoffs, then we had these furloughs. Now it just seems like the longer people are laid off, the more the government will say, oh, we didn't need them. We're still functioning without them. So we don't need to bring them back. We don't need to pay them. And so I think she's looking at this man ain't going to live forever. We got to
Hmm.
figure out who the leaders in the future will be. She's not old. And
Mm-mm.
she does represent, I would say, a significant portion of the party. And she's not stupid either. And I think that's the piece where a lot of Democrats, especially younger Democrats, make, but I won't don't just put this on young people, but people make the mistake constantly. If you don't like someone, you oftentimes say that they're stupid because you don't agree with their ideas. And I've been very clear with people over the years. It's like, just 'cause there are a lot of people I disagree with, but there are a lot of people I'm like, but they're smart. And I wouldn't turn my
Mm-hmm.
back on them. And the first time I noticed that was when I was in high school and college, when I heard white people talk about Condoleezza Rice. Now, I didn't agree with Condoleezza Rice on a lot of things, but they're like, she's so dumb. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I don't like her, but she's not dumb. And so that's the first time I realized it's like, oh, disliking someone's ideas, you file them in the dumb category. And I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene is. I don't think that she's as polished as some of the Republicans, but
Right.
she clearly has her finger on the pulse. And there's as much as we see our dissension and we've got the far left in the middle and we've got conservative Democrats and we're all over the place. Republicans have it too. They're just better at keeping what goes on in-house shut down, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she's the rogue. We have so many rogues. It shows the fact that we're a big tent party and it's like, oh my gosh, y'all can't get it together. But Republicans, they will disagree, but they've kind of got that Nancy Pelosi spirit where it's like everybody is in line. Okay. When company comes over, everybody puts on a happy face. She's breaking that facade and saying, like, no, we're not happy face time because Mike Johnson, you remember Mike Johnson barely got in. Remember?
Right.
There was the
And
fight about him
but
even
like
becoming speaker.
also nobody else wanted that fucking job. Right.
Right,
Like
because you
I
have to deal with the maniac who's going to have you out there looking like Boo Boo the Fool because he'll say one thing one day and you have to go hard in the paint to defend it, and then you won't get a memo when he changes his mind the next day, and you have to go hard in the paint defending the thing that you denounced the day before. So it's a terrible job to have. We've seen it time and time again. But you need someone who doesn't really have shame to take that job. And so
and that was him.
that was him.
Okay, so two more questions for you before I let you go. And the first is midterm elections.
Mhm.
Do you think we're having them?
Yes, I do. Do I think that they could be corrupted, by the voting machines and the quiet shenanigans that we saw in Georgia in 2018, right?
Mm-hmm.
In quote unquote Democratic districts. It's like, okay, so you deliver the machines but no ballots? You deliver the machines but no plugs? Right? Or you change the polling station, or you have, these like ICE agents outside in particular
Yep.
communities. I think that's the type of stuff that we'll see. We'll have them, but like, will they be fair? Right. And so if there's a line around the block and people got to go to work, I'm not missing work because I'm trying to vote. Right. And so when you have like one operating voting machine in a district that folks are going to turn out, I think that's the type of shenanigans that we'll see.
Okay. And then my final question for you, my dear friend. This show is the fire pit. And at the fire pit, right, we gather, we share stories, and we build community and connection. But we also throw things in the fire that need to be burned up and let go of. So, my dear friend, Dr. Christina Greer, what are you throwing in the fire pit this week?
Well, in the Black community, we just say you got to Teddy Pendergrass it. You got to let it go. So I'm applying for something in my academic world, and there were some shenanigans that happened last time I applied for something, and I just need to let go of that energy of like dealing with the racism and sexism that I dealt with like a decade ago. And it's like, it's not 2015, it's 2025, and
Mm-hmm.
you are a different person, and you were dealing with some of the same people, but different people. And so I need to sort of not bring that kind of angry energy into the present for what I'm dealing with and working on now, because I'm in a very different space of like, as oppressive as this regime is,
Yes.
there is a certain level of liberation that I
Mm-hmm.
feel because I am not going to be subsumed by them.
Mm.
So there's a certain level of freedom, Black joy is revolutionary, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I continuously feel, and maybe it's because I wasn't a birder 10 years ago and I am now, but there's something about this, was it Lucille Clifton, where it's like, every day you have tried to kill me and you have failed, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
there is a certain level of Black woman womanness that I have entered into in these past 10 years that I was not in last time, that I feel so grounded and so unafraid and so audacious. It's just kind of, I'm putting all the like young, insecure,
Yeah.
angry Chrissy into the fire. And this is like, you know, you can't touch this. You can't. So that's where I am.
I love it so much, and great sage advice for the rest of us to put what no
Listen,
longer
we're saging.
serves us, right? What no longer serves us into the fire pit. My friend, Dr. Christina Greer, please tell people how they can find you and follow you and stay up to date with the brilliance that is you.
Well, I'm kind of a private person. I'm no longer on Twitter because it's like a dead mall. So I'm really only on Instagram, but I don't really talk
Right.
about like outside of podcasts. I have an FAQ NYC podcast for those who care about New York City politics. You can find me on Instagram. It's dr_CM Greer. I did that before I understood how the internet worked. But you're gonna get a whole bunch of birds and nature and like fun science projects that I find in my cupboards because I forgot that I had ginger in there. So like that's where we are. Like I use social media more for just like joy.
Yes,
I
I
was like, you
love
can see
that.
me on
And I
TV. If
love
you
that
want to
too.
hear me
So
talk about
folks,
politics, you can read these books.
right, read those books. And if you want to see life, right, you can follow her
Mhm.
on Instagram. My friend, thank you so much for making time
Anytime.
to come on the
Anytime.
fire pit. I appreciate you.
Marshmallows next time.
Next time, yes.